Hello guys and welcome back to my channel Interview with Bunny, and we are back with another video on our system designing fundamental playlist. And the topic that we will be discussing today is one of the crucial topics for system designing fundamental playlist, and that is database, because understanding the database is very much important if you are going with any system designing interview. And in our last few videos on our system designing fundamental, we have discussed in detail about what is a client and the server architecture, what is DNS, what are the different layers of the OSI model, what are the network protocol, means TCP, UDP, WebSocket, and all these things. After that, we have discussed in detail that what are the different type of scaling mechanism, means what is the vertical and the horizontal scaling. And in our last video, we have discussed about the load balancer. And now in this video, we will be discussing about the database, means for a particular system or a particular application, how the data should be saved in our database, and what type of data we have in our ecosystem, or what are the different type of database we have. All those things we will be going through in detail in this video. So our database is nothing but a mechanism by which we save or persist the data of the customer in our backend. So as you know, data is the crucial part for any business right now. Means whatever the analytical decision you are taking, or whatever the application or use case you are creating, everything should be backed with data. Means whatever the need of the business or whatever the needs of the customer is, everything can be solved with the help of the data. So saving the user related data is very much crucial in today's world. And as you know, all the AI and ML model that we have right now, means starting from the GPT, Claude, everything is driven by the data. So if we do not store the data of the customer or anything, it will not be possible for us to develop any model or develop any application. So very frankly telling, data is the crucial part for running any business successfully in today's world. But to save all this data, obviously we need a mechanism by which we can save it logically, and it should get saved in a systematic way. And to save all this data, we have the concept of the database. So that is what a database is in a very simple language. And I hope I do not have to right now tell that why we should not save the data in a simple Excel or a flat file to run any application. It is quite understandable that with the growing amount of the data, it is not possible for any application to save all those data in a simple flat file and run the complete application. So what we need? We need a database. But the problem is that right now in the market, there are hundreds and hundreds of different databases that are present, and everyone is doing something innovative so that we can save all type of data. But during your interview, when you are designing your system, at that time you have to tell your interviewer, or you have to convince your interviewer that what type of database you should be using in your system, so that all the functional requirement as well as the non-functional requirement that you have gathered from your interviewer gets fulfilled. And to convince that to your interviewer, obviously you need a thorough understanding of what is a database, what are the different types of database that are available in the market, so that you can explain to your interviewer why one database is better than the other. So in this video, we will be discussing each and everything that you need to design any system from the scratch. So let's first understand that what is a data. So as you know, data are nothing but the raw fact, symbol, or character which we get from the user. And once we process those data gets generated or converted to an information by which we can process or take some meaningful decision. But the first important thing is, like, before we process the data to convert it into some meaningful information, we need to persist that data into some database. So a data can be broadly classified into three sections. Number one is a structured data, number two is a semi-structured data, and number three is a unstructured data. So basically these are the three different options or different categories by which we can segregate data. Let's understand all these things one by one. So whenever we are telling about the structured data, which means that any data that can be saved neatly in a database in a structured manner with the help of the rows and the columns with some relation associated with them, we consider that as a structured data. For example, you are saving the information of the user. Now, whenever you are creating a profile system or you are creating a user system, then at that time, think about what are the metadata you need to save in the database. So for example, you need the name of the user, you need the password, email ID, phone number, address, and all these things. So for example, you are storing all these 5 entry of a particular customer in the database. Again, for the second customer, also for your application, you will be also saving the same information. So here if you see, all the information of each and every row or each and every customer that you are saving are in a structured manner. Means you are defining that what are the data that you need to be saved in the database. Means since we are saving a definite structure object in the database, that is why we call this type of data as a structured data. So here if you try to understand this with the help of an example, you will see that whatever the information that we are saving for a particular user are same. Means here we are saving the name and then we are saving the city of a particular user, because obviously think it like that whenever you are giving a form to the user to upload his data, those fields that he have to fulfill to update his user detail will be same, and that is why those things are actually nothing but a structured data which we are saving in the database, and that is why we call this type of data as a structured data. I hope this is clear. Now coming to the next topic, that is what is a semi-structured data. So a semi-structured data is a type of data where we cannot define that we will be storing the same details for each and every customer. Means for example, we are creating an Amazon website and there we are saving the information about the product. Means for example, you are creating a product catalog service and there what we need, for example, you are selling an iPhone, and for a product called as iPhone you will be having different specification. For example, it will define the amount of the RAM it have, amount of the hardware it have, and all this information. But on the second use case, there can be another product on your product category. Let's take an example, you are selling a battery, but over there for that product the attribute will be different. Means at that time it will be the type of the battery, what is the voltage capacity, and all these things. So based on the product that you are saving in the database, the data that you are saving differs from each other, but though everything comes under the product category, and that is why this type of data we call as semi-structured data. Means there is not a predefined structure, means all this data might not have the same structural definition. I hope that is clear that what is the definition of a semi-structured data. So these are nothing but the example of the semi-structured data. Means for a product category, means for a single table only, we have data of different structure. So here you can see we have the information of the iPhone. Here we have the information of some power bank or battery. So I hope right now you are clear that though both these type of data are going into the single database, but the characteristic will differ from each other, and that is why we call it as a semi-structured data. Now the next third type of the data that we have or we normally use is called as a unstructured data. And what this unstructured data means the data which cannot be modeled into some data structure or into some database. For example, a image file, a video file, a PDF file. So all these file systems or all these components that cannot be stored or should not be stored in the database comes under the category of the unstructured form of the data. I hope this is clear that what are the different type of data we have, that is the structured data, semi-structured data, and the unstructured data. Now since you have understood that what are the different types of the data, now let's see that how this data should be saved in the database, because as this data are structurally different from each other, so it is not recommended that we save all this data in a single type of the database. So depending on the type of the data you are saving, the type of the database that you are selecting will also differ. So let's first start with the first one, and that is the structured one. So whenever we are telling that we are storing a structured data, which means that we are saving a relational data. So here if you understand that what a relational data means for example in a database you have different information of a particular user. Means for example in one table you have user related data, in another table you have information about what are the products that a particular user have purchased, or in another table you have that all the products that are there in the wish list of a particular user. So here if you see, all these three data are interrelated with each other. That is why all the structured data where it is possible to relate with each other, those type of data we call as a relational data. I hope this is clear. Now, whenever you are telling that we want to save our relational data, the most commonly used database that we use to save all this relational data are as follows. Number one, the SQL server. Number two, the Oracle server. Number three, the Postgres database. And number four, the MySQL server. So other than that, there are also many more databases that are available in the market or available in our industry. We support this type of operation means saving all this type of structural data. So I hope this is clear. So during your system designing, whenever you see a problem statement or whenever you see a use case where you want to save a structural data into some database, blindly go for some relational database and you can take any of the relational database that is present over here. So since now you got the idea that what is a structured data means what we call as a relational data, now let's discuss about the semi-structured data and let's see that in what type of database we actually store this semi-structured data. So for example, we have the use case of saving a JSON object into our database. And here you can see a JSON object can be considered as an example of the semi-structured data. But is it not possible to store a JSON object in a MySQL or a relational database? Absolutely, it is possible. But the problem is, though we can save this type of data in the MySQL or in the structural database, but the time complexity of manipulating with this type of data or the way of retrieval of this data becomes a critical thing. And moreover, on top of that, semi-structured data can be of many categories. For example, a key value pair can be a semi-structured data. A JSON object can be a semi-structured data. Any relationship among the data. For example, if you are creating a Facebook application, at that time, if you see that, for example, I am friend with few people. After that, those friends are friends of some other people. So if there is some hierarchical dependency that we have to save in the database, then those type of data are also called as a semi-structured. So a semi-structured data can be categorized into many formats, and based on each and every format, it is recommended that we should store the data in the relevant category of the database where the retrieval time and the manipulation time of the data is optimized. So we will be discussing all those things in detail very soon. But as I was telling you, semi-structured data can be of many categories and it is not possible, just like the structured data, we cannot save the data in a single category of the database. And the database where we save all the semi-structured data, we call that type of database as a NoSQL database. Now, as I was discussing, a NoSQL database can be of different category based on the data that we are persisting on each and every database. So let me first define that what are the different type of database we have for our semi-structured data, or what are the different type of NoSQL database that are available in the market for serving different type of the production use case. So a NoSQL database can be broadly classified into 5 categories. Number 1 as a document store, number 2 as a key value store, number 3 the column store, number 4 the graph database, and number 5 as the time series database. So before going into each and every category of the database and before discussing about what are the most popular databases that are available for each and every category, first let's understand that what type of data should be stored on each and every category or each and every type of database that we have defined over here. So as I have told you, NoSQL database can be broadly classified into 5 different categories. And here if you see, the first example is the document store, which means that whenever we are storing any documents, it is not a Word document. Rather, here while discussing about the data, we define the JSON or a BSON data as document. So here, whenever there is a need of storing a JSON object or a BSON object in our database for fulfilling some category or some use case, then the type of database or type of NoSQL database that you should use is called as a document store database. I hope this is clear. And the most popularly is document DB or the document store are nothing but the MongoDB, and number 2 as a CouchDB. So other than these two, there are plenty more database available over the market, but these are the most commonly used database that we use for storing this type of document in our system. I hope this is clear. Now, the another type of unstructured data can be a key value store. So, for example, for some use cases, what you need to store a key and a value for a particular use case. So, for example, for a use case, you are storing the username as a key and the access token or the request token as a value. I'm just giving an example. We do not store it like that, but just for an example, understand this fact that here for storing some information, we need to save in the form of the key value pair. And whenever there is a need of storing something in the form of the key value pair, the most popularly and the most commonly used database is nothing but the Redis and the DynamoDB. I hope this is clear. But this doesn't mean that you cannot store a key value pair in any other type of the database. It can easily happen that you can easily store the key value pair in a MySQL or a relational database also, where here the key will be nothing but the customer ID and the city will be changed by some access token or something. So it is not that. So clearly remember that it is not that to save a key value pair you have to use a Redis or a DynamoDB. Right now in the market, all the database that we have more or less support all the behavior to fulfill all the use case. But since there are some specialized database which performs all these things in a logical way, so it is recommended to use the proper database whenever you are saving particular type of semi-structured data. I hope this is clear. Now the third category is the column store, or what we call as a white column store. Here, for example, you need to save some information of the user. And for the first user, for example, you are storing the name, category, what are the things they have liked, and so on. And for the second user, there are some different sets of information that you are saving over there. So for this type of data, though we are saving row by row, it is not that just because it is written as a white column means the data will be saved in the column. Rather, each column of this type of data can contain a very large and a flexible set of the columns. Unlike a SQL database or a relational database, every row does not need to have the same set of columns. So those type of data can be easily persisted in this type of storage, what we call it as a white column store. So another example, just to give you a clear idea, for example, we have 3 sensors in our car, and as you know, the sensors are nothing but the IoT device. And for example, the first sensor emits few of the signal, for example, time, temperature, humidity, pressure, battery voltage, and all these things. And the second sensor emits some different signal, for example, time, temperature, but along with that it also emits the speed and the GPS signal and the fuel level it has. So different sensors are emitting different value over the internet. So to store all this type of data in a single database where we do not have a fixed column or we can have a flexible column, at that time the most commonly database that we use is called as a white column store. And the most popularly and the widely used white column database are nothing but the Cassandra DB as well as the edge-based database. So these are the most popularly used NoSQL database to store all this type of information. I hope this is clear. Now coming to our fourth database, that is the graph database. So this use case is very easy. So for example, whenever you want to store the information in the form of a tree or something, or in the form of a graph, at that time the most commonly used database is nothing but the graph database. So for example, as I've already told you, if you are maintaining a relationship between the data points, for example, the node will become your data and edges can be your relation. At that time, this type of database or this type of graph that you want to store, we popularly use this type of graph database. And the most popularly used graph database are nothing but the Neo4j and the ArangoDB. So as you have understood, whenever you want to store some data where a graph-like topology or a graph-like information is needed, then we use this type of information. Now coming to our last database, that is the time series database. So for this use case, it is very easy. So for example, your application is logging some information on each and every second. So with respect to the time, the information is getting persisted in the DB. And on this type of use case, the most popularly used database that we use is called as a time series DB. So as the name suggests, means the data is saved with respect to the time. And the most popularly used time series database are nothing but the InfluxDB and the timescale database. I hope you are clear with what are the different type of NoSQL database which are widely used in the market and what are the most common example of each and every database we have for each and every category. But the main question and the main problem is that it is not that, as I've already told you, that it is not that for saving the logging of an application, we can only use this InfluxDB. It can be easily solved, or it can be easily persist in the MySQL database also, or it can be also stored in the Cassandra database. So it is not that a single database is bound to be used for a particular category of the data. But what we recommend, it is good that for each and every category of the data, if you know or if we have the support for that type of database, go for that, because at that time, since those databases are specialized to handle those type of data, the retrieval time, the saving time of those type of data will be optimal, which will result into a very efficient and a low latency application. I hope this is clear. But other than these also, there are few more specialized databases that are also available in the market. I hope this is clear, and I hope you have understood that what are the two type of data, that is, one is the structured data and number two is the semi-structured data. Now coming to our third category of the data, that is the unstructured data. And this type of data is very easy to identify and very easy to store. So whenever we are telling that we need to create a system which is dealing with images, videos, files and all those things, so as I've told you, this type of data cannot be persisted in a database. So obviously, if you are creating a YouTube platform, at that time you cannot save 2 GB of data in a database. So for those type of use case, or to save those type of information, what we do, we use another type of storage mechanism which we call as a blob storage, or we call as a object storage. And the most popularly used blob storage or the object storage that are available in the market are the S3 bucket, GCS and the Azure Blob. So if you have any use case where you have to save the data of an image file or a video file, audio file, then blindly go with this type of blob storage. I hope right now you are clear with that what are the different type of data, what we call as a SQL data, what we call as a NoSQL database, and what are the different categories of the NoSQL database that are available in the industry. So the next question is, during your interview, if your interviewer asks you that for a particular use case, for example, you are designing Amazon, at that time, on which database you will be saving the user information, which database you will be using the product information, or where you will be storing the user related data, at that time you have to give a meaningful explanation that for each and every use case which database you are actually using. But the next problem is, like, for example, you have understood that for your use case you need to use a time series database, that you are clear with. But within the time series database also, there are n number of DB that support the same functionality. For example, we have InfluxDB, we have timescale DB, and so on. So at that time, if you want to specifically tell that I want to just use the InfluxDB, you have to also give the reasoning for that. And that becomes a crucial part for your designing, because if you give a wrong reason, it will clearly give an impact to your interviewer that you are not aware of the data that you are generating by your service. So all those things, that on what condition, which database you should be using, that we will be discussing in our next video, where we will go inside each and every database and I will give you a cheat code or a cheat sheet where you will find out that for each and every type of data, or whenever you are solving a particular use case, which database will be a right choice for you to persist this type of information. So I hope you are clear with today's concept, that what is the data and what are the different type of data that are available in the market. And in our next video, we will be discussing in detail that based on each and every scenario, what database we should use and what should be the correct reasoning for choosing a particular database. But before that, if you have liked this video and you have found this video useful, do not forget to like, share and subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon so that you never miss an update from my side and you are always ready for your next interview. So see you on our next video. Thank you.